Hey guys, in this video I'm going to update you with where I'm at with the front brake. Hopefully the video quality is a lot better too. I just invested in a new camera this past weekend, so I should be getting a lot better quality than I was with my GoPro. So basically what I had to do with the front brake was completely rebuild the whole system, so all the seals. So first what I started off with was the front caliper. What I did there was replace the little seal that's inside, and how you do that is pull the caliper off with the two 14mm bolts before you disconnect any of the brake lines or anything. Pump your brake handle a bunch of times, and there's actually a piston in there, and the piston will get pushed out. Have something on the ground, catch can or whatever, ready to pick it up. Because it does, leak out most of the brake fluid when you do that. But that's one of the easiest way, or one of the only ways to actually get that piston out of the caliper, is to use the hydraulic pressure of the brake fluid to push it out. So if you're going to replace that seal, make sure to do that before you disconnect anything else from the brake system. Otherwise it's going to be a big pain to try to get that piston out. So once you get that piston out, on the inside you'll see a little seal just like this, just a little seal that goes around the piston, and you can replace that pretty easily. There's going to be some corrosion and some rust and stuff in there, so I ended up soaking mine in some evapor rust and then using some sandpaper, nothing too coarse, maybe 200 or 300 grit sandpaper, just to kind of go on the inside of the caliper itself as well as the piston, just to make sure everything's nice and clean and fluid and moves really well. So that's what I did with that. And then after I got it put back together, I found out that my actual master cylinder itself was also leaking, so I got a rebuild kit for that, and that just came in. I took it apart. This is kind of what the insides of the master cylinder actually look like. So there's like this little dust boot, and there's the actual, plunger assembly and a spring and a couple seals. All of that is replaced with the rebuild kit, so you can see the new plunger in there, spring, all that kind of stuff is in there already. So all of this gets replaced, so you don't really have to worry about hurting it too much when you take it out. There's this little clip here. This little clip holds on the dust boot inside of where the actual lever pushes. So there's a little clip to get the dust boot out. You can pull the dust boot out. Once you do that, there's this little clip right here. You use some, pliers, or I actually use picks for it because I don't have a good set of snap ring pliers yet. So I actually just use little clips, or little, little things like that to take it out. Stick one side in the little hole and kind of pry it out. Once you get that out, then you can get the actual plunger itself out. These, if they're as corroded as mine, are really sticky and hard to get out. So what I do is throw the bolt that you bolt the lever on back through this hole, and then use a flathead screwdriver to kind of get some leverage underneath there and right onto this little, if I can focus on it, this little kind of indentation, little edge right there. You can get in there and pry it up from there. So that's the easiest way to get these out that I found if they're really corroded like mine was. Just get a little flathead screwdriver right under there, and you can kind of pull it right out. So once you have that out, then you can get this little rubber thing and the actual spring, and that is all of your insides to your master cylinder. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and put all this stuff back together, and then I can kind of show you what it looks like when it's all done. Then we can go put it back on the bike, connect all the brake lines, and then start the bleeding process. So that's where we're at right now. Alright, should be able to see kind of how it went together. I will go ahead and throw up a little diagram on the screen right now to kind of show you each little part and how it goes back together, but it's really not too bad. Getting it apart is much more difficult than getting it put back together, especially if you have a proper snap ring, set of snap ring pliers. I don't. I just have the really cheap, you know, Harbor Freight ones that totally bend and don't work properly at all. So probably 10 times easier if you actually have some of those, but it can be done without them. I just, you know, put the snap ring in there, use a pick to kind of get it seated, and then I actually use a socket to evenly press down on the snap ring all the way down, and you can hear it click into the little groove down there. So yep, I have it all put back together now. The plunger moves nice and easily. You know, you can feel the suction on there, but it does move nicely, so you know that it, you know, nothing's kind of binding on the inside or anything like that. It's working pretty well. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and throw the lever back on, and then we're going to mount it back up onto the bike, connect the lines, and then we'll bleed the system and see how everything goes. Alright, now that I have the brake system back together, I'm going to bleed the system now. So it's pretty easy to do. What I'm going to do is fill up the reservoir with fluid, and then this is the little bleed screw right here. If you've never done it before, this one right here is a bleed screw. So what I can do is fill it with fluid, pump it a whole bunch of times, you know, with my hand, and loosen that and try to let some air out. I also have a vacuum pump, a Mighty Vac, I think is what it's called, and it works pretty well. All you do is hook up a vacuum line to, you know, that bleed screw, and then you pump it and it pulls a negative vacuum on the system, and when you open the screw, that vacuum starts to suck the air out of the system through the bleed screw. So it's basically, you can do it manually or you can do it with a vacuum. I'm going to try it with both, kind of see which way works better. I think my Mighty Vac is intended for a car, so I think the bleed screw may be just a little bit small and it's not sealing super well on it. But I'm going to try it both ways, and we'll see which way works out better. Alright, well, this is what I just discovered when I was trying to bleed the brakes. I couldn't get any pressure to build, so I actually just found, see if I can get it to focus on it. Right there, there's a crack on the actual caliper itself. So right there below the bleed screw, you can see that crack. So that's not going to allow it to build any pressure at all, because it's just going to be constantly sucking in more and more air through that crack. Luckily for me, I'm a bit of a hoarder, and I actually have a spare caliper just pulled off my shelf. It's the exact same caliper as the one I already had. So what I'm going to do is pull this one apart. Check that seal in there. Since I have a brand new seal in this one, there's no point to have a cracked caliper with a brand new seal in it. So I'm going to check the seal out on this one. If this one's good, I'm just going to use this and I'll pull that seal out some other time. If this seal is bad, then I will swap the two, swap this caliper on, and then try to bleed the system again. But that could definitely be a big issue that we can't go without fixing. So yep, I'm gonna go ahead and swap some parts around. Luckily I had that spare caliper already, but this kind of stuff always tends to pop up on projects. Everything else on this bike has been going super smooth, so it's really not a big deal that I'm having to throw a little bit of extra time and a little bit of money into the front brakes, because everything else has been going smooth. So it's kind of how projects go. So I'm going to take apart the caliper and stuff, and we'll go from there. Hey guys, I'm back out here working on the front brakes still. I've been running into quite a few issues, but I finally got the piston and the pad taken out of the caliper that I had on the shelf. This is what it looks like. I wanted to show it to you guys so you can see that even if the caliper looks pretty nice on the outside, it can be pretty sludged up and gross on the inside. So I'm going to soak this one in some cleaner, sand it out. I'm going to throw in the new seal I bought that I had in the cracked caliper. Once I put in the new seal and everything's all cleaned up, then I will throw it back on the bike finally, and potentially be done with the front brake. So it's been a full rebuild of the whole braking system at this point. Multitude of different issues. Master cylinder was leaking, so rebuilt that. Then the piston seal was bad. You guys saw me replace that. Then I found out that the piston was cracked. Whether I did that or it was already cracked, I'm not sure. Either way, it was cracked right where the bleed screw goes in. And then the actual lines themselves were clogged, so I had to clean that out. How I did that is I keep a guitar string in my toolbox. So I don't know what size guitar string it is, but it's pretty thin. So I keep a guitar string in there, and then for exactly that reason, also for carburetors too, to be able to clean out kind of long distances. So I just kind of started poking the guitar string through and cleaned out some passages, and then blew brake cleaner through until it was all nice and clear. So this whole front brake, all from the lever all the way to the caliper, was completely messed up and clogged and stuff. So yep, once I get this one all cleaned up and rebuilt, I will get it on the bike, and hopefully that'll be that. Alright, I got the piston all cleaned out, or I should say the caliper all cleaned out, so you can see it's a whole lot better now than it was when I first pulled it out. The seal that was in there is actually in near perfect condition, so I'm actually just going to reuse that, and I'll just throw the other seal and the other caliper up on the shelf. Maybe when I get my TIG welder, I can weld the aluminum up and try to repair the crack and kind of mess around with that, but I'll just throw that on the shelf for now. I also cleaned up the piston. It's got some corrosion on it, but the actual surface that goes against the seals and is in perfect shape, so it'll do just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and throw this back together, throw it on the bike, and then we'll test it out and see if we finally have a working front brake. Alright, I think I finally got my front brake issue figured out. It seems to be holding pressure nicely, and finally got it bleeded and everything, so I think I'm good to go there. I won't really know until I go on a little test ride around the neighborhood, but what I want to do now is start the bike up. It's been probably a week and a half since I started it, and I just want to check the clutch engagement and that kind of stuff to make sure that all that's working well before we try to actually take it for a ride. We'll see if it starts. float over here. Looks like it might be stuck, so let's see if I can tap on that and get it to... I think that's pretty much going to be it for this video. So we got the front brake done, started it up, and seems to be running pretty well. I have a little bit of a fuel leak I'm going to look into right now. I believe it's just another little O-ring, kind of like what I had before. Not a big deal. It'll take me 5 minutes to fix that. So it's just about there. So I mean, front brake hopefully is working properly now. Once I get it started up, I'm going to make a video sometime in the next couple of days, hopefully, about syncing the carbs. Had a couple people ask for a video on that. So mine are pretty well synced, but I'll show you kind of how to hook up the gauge, what to look for, and then kind of what to adjust if you need to. So yeah, so I'm going to cut this video off here, and then we will go from there. So I'll go ahead and fix that fuel leak and get to work on that carb syncing video. But hopefully our front brake is dialed in now, so we are one step closer to getting this thing out on the road.